So it looks like we're live. I forgot one thing. I always forget like one thing when I'm doing this, and then so we're gonna talk about vision today. We're gonna talk
Oh,
about a
good.
lot of different things today. Hopefully you're okay with that.
That is fine with me.
And I will publish the stream afterwards as a recorded video on my Twitch, so you'll be able to go back and watch it if you maybe forget something that we talked about, you're not taking notes, or maybe you want to refer to something when you ask me a question later. All of those are fine, right?
Gotcha.
So specifically today, I'm gonna give you like the docket of what we're gonna talk about, and then we're gonna go into it. So first we're going to talk about vision at a conceptual level, sort of the purpose of vision, how do you get vision, generic structures of vision that you're going to look to set up. Then we're
All
going to
right.
talk about more intuitive uses of vision. We're going to talk about some examples. We'll talk about vision as an objective and using vision to deny vision. And if we're not too tired by all of that, then we might talk a little bit about systems at the end, but that might just get relegated to another lecture.
Okay.
So, getting into that, to start, the purpose of vision. I know that sounds really facetious, but what do you think the purpose of vision is?
Well, as I use vision, vision is how you can get information on the map through the fog of war. Because as we know in League of Legends, there is the fog of war in the jungle and on the other side of the map, where you don't have towers or minions giving you line of sight. Wards allow you to get vision in areas where you would normally not have vision, which can be useful for setting up for objectives, seeing ganks, flanks, and other happenings around the map that can impact your chances of success.
All right, it's a pretty kosher answer. Let's break it down a little bit. The purpose of vision specifically that I liked hearing from you was the idea that you're getting info and then using that information to make decisions. That's a really good condensed way of thinking about what you need vision for in the first place, right?
Yeah.
It's a not a resource per se, but like it's a step in the staircase of making an informed decision.
Yeah.
So,
It's sort of like because I play a lot of card games,
mhm,
particularly Yu-Gi-Oh. Getting hand information, especially in a meta like the one that's currently in the game, for the TCG at least, getting hand information is super important just because it allows you to decide how to make plays. And similarly in League, getting map information is very important because it also allows you to decide how you're going to approach making plays and uh, going to objectives. What do you know that your opponents don't, or
mm,
what do you know that your opponents also know that you can take advantage of?
sure. So, as a TCG player, you're familiar with the idea that like both knowing something is somewhere and knowing something is not somewhere, both of those things are valuable, right?
Yeah.
The TCG meta right now has a bunch of hand traps, doesn't it?
It's a lot of hand traps and a lot of board breakers.
Of
More board
course.
breakers than hand traps right now, just because the top decks being Splight and Tear can just play through a ton of hand traps and be pretty much unimpeded. So for the most part, you have board breakers or cards, cards that will help you on turn two.
Good.
But if you're on turn one and you have triple tack, and your opponent plays a hand trap, you can get that information of, oh, there's going to be a board breaker coming when you use the confiscation part of triple tactics.
The last time I checked in with the meta, it was all hand traps. So to hear that there's now something that they're playing to specifically defeat hand traps is hilarious to me.
Yeah, no,
I,
I mean, it's nice. It's just hand traps aren't super powerful right now, but that's beside the point.
Nah, nah, nah. So back to the idea of using information to make decisions. Um, we talked about what vision is useful for. How do we get vision? Just like generically, you don't have to give me some kind of like streamlined plan.
Well, get vision. You place a ward in a place that is typically under the fog of war. So in brush, you can get vision within the brush so that people can't hide in there, or can't even in like combat. They can't cancel your auto attacks by walking into a brush.
Right, that's on me. I asked the wrong question.
Okay, you ward.
Yeah, warding is in fact a way to get vision, but that's not quite what I meant.
Okay.
What I mean is, how do you get the opportunity to place words, since generally speaking, the words that you want to place, spoiler alert for later, are not going to be in your lane?
Oh, okay. Okay. I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense.
The answer is the previous video topic, actually. It's this thing called tempo. If you need a refresher on what tempo is, let me know. And if you want to go in depth in it, there's like a hour-long discussion I had with Beanie that's up on the Twitch. But basically, one of the things that you can spend tempo on is vision. Explain tempo? Okay. So
yeah, if I didn't see that talk, so if you could just give me a quick, rough go,
sure.
Get them for tempo.
So very quickly speedrunning the talk without actually talking about everything that we talked about, because that would take a long time. The most useful way to think about tempo in the context of our vision talk today is tempo is a resource that you spend. It's like gold or experience, except it's a compound resource. It's the quantity time that you can spend doing something other than accruing gold and experience without losing more gold and experience as the opportunity cost. So if you're a laner, generally speaking, you create tempo by freezing a wave, crashing a wave, or when your opponent freezes on you, since those are all examples of when you're not going to miss minions dying to causes that you can do something about. And if you're a jungler, it's a little bit more ambiguous, but the idea is that you're getting the most value by doing the thing that you're doing. So if you're Karthus, you can't kill anybody in the game, you're probably just full clearing, and tempo is a made-up concept to you. If you are a champion like Pantheon, and your clear is meh, but your ganks are insanely good after level 2, then you're probably going to be spending all of your time ganking places, because that's where the opportunity cost is going to be the lowest. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So, back to vision. It's hard to do, but we need to quantify the value that a piece of vision that you can obtain will provide. Because getting vision is almost always going to be the most valuable thing that you can do, unless you already have it. That is to say, the best use of tempo, the best thing you can spend it on, is probably going to be vision, assuming that vision is an option. Since if vision is an option, you probably don't have it. And if we don't have vision, then going back to the first thing we talked about, you probably can't make an informed decision. It all makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Great. So, for laners, we're going to spend most of the time talking about you, because junglers don't actually have to spend very much tempo getting vision, since getting vision that's valuable to junglers tends to come from doing things that they're already going to do, like going into the river for crab, or walking into the enemy jungle to see if there are camps available, based on previous information. So for laners, the idea of tempo being spent for vision is more pertinent. Sorry, Kappa, that doesn't happen to apply to you too much. So I mentioned...
I'm also, even though I'm a jungler currently, I also still, you know, I also lane. I play I still will play top lane or support, so
Well, the other thing is, as a jungler, you need to recognize when your laners have an opportunity to get vision for you, since you're the one making decisions based off of vision the most. Checks out,
gotcha.
right? This is part of why you hear so many people say that junglers, as competitive players, should be talking the most. Because they're the ones that have the most time to actively think about what to do with vision and how to make the most accurate plans based on the information they can aggregate. So, we talked about 3 sources of tempo as a laner, right?
Yeah.
One thing that I didn't mention was that these different sources of tempo can create different amounts of tempo depending on, the size of your crash, or whether they're freezing or it's just going to bounce and it's taking a while to bounce, or how long you can hold the freeze. Are you in a matchup where you can't even hold the freeze, or are you playing Tristana Lamau? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Sometimes it's the wave states are just not always going to be predictable. So you have to work with the wave state that you have, and that determines how much tempo you get
yeah,
and how much you can use.
exactly. So, with regards to this, we're going to mostly focus on crashes because players that are watching this are most likely going to be using crashes the most in their solo queue games. It's really hard to use freezes effectively in solo queue just because of the lack of communication. So there's 3 kinds of crashes. And those 3 kinds of crashes give you 3 different quantities of tempo, right? There's a fast
Okay.
crash, where you crash less than a full wave. There we go.
So that being less than 6, so not including a cannon, or does this include a cannon, or is that a whole different thing?
Cannons, that's a whole different thing. We'll get to it.
Okay.
There's a slow crash, where you're crashing between quantities 1 and 2 waves. And there is a very large crash. And large crashes are greater than 2 waves.
Okay.
And largely, you're going to be aiming for a crash of this size if you're regularly controlling the wave, just because it's the most feasible. And when you see bad players play the game, they're going to opt for option 1 because they autopilot fast crash every wave. If I've ever made fun of you in VAD chat, it's probably because you're a fast crash autopiloter.
That is true. You know, I will say it. I'm definitely that kind of person. I just like to kill minions.
So, you remember when I said that there are 3 kinds of crashes and they give you different quantities of tempo?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the quantity of tempo you get from fast crashing is 0. So,
Awesome.
so that's why I make fun of people for doing it, like as their autopilot behavior.
Yeah,
Sometimes
and
it can't be helped.
sorry to jump in here. It's sort of like how in top lane, if you just keep brainlessly pushing waves, you're never getting a good chance to go out and get vision that matters, and that's why you're such an easy target in top lane if you're not properly controlling your wave and doing actual crashes or freezes.
Yeah. And even worse, if you're always fast crashing, then at best, the wave will return to neutral, and at worst, your opponent will freeze you. And then they have control of the wave. They're the captain now. So we're going to focus on these 2, slow crashes and large crashes. Large crashes only generally happen on cannon wave crashes, which is why we're coming back to that. The idea being that you're going to stack. You're going to very slowly push the first wave, usually by killing 1 caster advantage. And then you're going to slowly, but not quite as slow as the first wave, push the second wave so that it has a snowballing effect. And when the wave enters underneath the tower of your opponent, that cannon wave will be coming across the midpoint of the lane so that it will reach the tower by the time your large crash from before has died. This gives you the most tempo, but it's very hard to do because generally speaking, people won't let you do it uncontested. So it's more of a mid-game idea where you're a side laner catching wave and you're trying to get back to a neutral in time. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So that's all of the tempo stuff we need to talk about for vision to really make sense, but we will come back to the idea of large crashes, so keep that in your head, okay?
Okay.
So a slow crash is going to give you a good period of time, 10, 15 seconds, where you can get out, put a ward down, and get back.
Yep.
And the idea here is how can we maximize the amount of value that that gives us, right? So let's talk about neutral setup and vision lines. Do you have a preference? You want to do one or the other first?
I think we should start with vision lines first. I think
Okay.
that seems more generic.
They are more generic, but they segue into the thing we're going to talk about after this. So we might come back to neutral setup later then.
Okay.
So a vision
Oh,
line.
all
What?
right. Well, okay, yeah, sure. Just whatever works.
Yeah. There's no like set order. It's just different things to talk about. A vision line is a structure or like a placement setup for words that lets you, in the least amount of words placed possible, make the most informed decision possible. Spoiler alert, that structure is in the shape of a line. If we're pretending that we are blue side gamers for just a moment, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to use the yellow so it sticks out. You need 3 of the following 4 words to make a vision line that's actually going to be helpful. It's pretty close to a line, right?
Yeah, that's about right.
Okay, now I can
And
tell
it's
you pretty quickly why this is so helpful, but I'd like to hear you explain it first.
yeah. Well, looking at it, it's actually really similar to when you think of like a 5 point. It's sort of like a 5 point, but it's pushed back a little bit. And a 5 point is a safe start because you have vision on every major entryway into your jungle.
Mm-hmm.
But with this, because it's further into the jungle, you have vision on every major pathway through the jungle.
Mm-hmm.
So before they even get to a lane, you know where people are on the map.
Great.
So you already know, like, okay, they, especially like, if I'm thinking as a jungler, this is complete and total vision over the enemy jungler right here. This is, all right, cool. I know exactly where they are at all times unless they are in the river. And I can utilize that knowledge to be like, okay, I know they're pathing topside. I can start pathing bot side and look for something down there, and I will not get responded to.
Mm.
Something like that.
So that's a good start. Cup brings up a good question. Maybe you can try to answer it before I get to it. He says, 3 out of the 4 is what I said is required, right? So I've drawn 4 here.
Mm-hmm.
And he asks which 3 I would suggest. Can you think about maybe the reasoning as to why only 3 out of the 4 are required and maybe which is optimal?
Well, 3 out of 4 I would imagine are required because you can each individual player can only have 3 wards, and most of those wards are going to be coming from the support, who has only 3 basic ward slots, not including vision wards and blue trinkets and the trinket wards, of course. So that's sort of my thought. Like if you are a support or you are working with the support, you can always have the ability to put down those 3 wards on your own. Otherwise, you have to depend on your lane your lane friends. And of course, these are also good spots for if you don't need to save a blue trinket for an objective that's coming up. You can drop your blue trinket in one of these spots to at least help out a little bit until it is destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's my thought about why it's 3. It's just because that is how many wards an individual player can put on the map, minus the vision ward slot.
Okay.
Uh, I don't. That feels good to me. I would say if I had to say which 3 are like the most important, the one in near blue buff, in that sort of corridor between blue wolves. Yeah, that one.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so like I guess 4, the 4th one there. That one I think is definitely important because it gives you pretty much complete info over the enemy jungle in terms of camps. And also that is it's a large choke point. It's a large pathway that a lot of players will move through unless they're moving near mid lane, near that 3 spot. On the top side of the map, I would say probably 2. I don't know why. Uh, I don't have a good reason for that. Other than that, it is close to mid lane, and it is a really great. That mid lane is a really good place to get ganks off, and particularly from the Raptor pit. As a jungler, a lot of ganks come from there. Especially some champions can't get over the wall, but people like Volibear who can just absolutely demolish you if you are trying to sit under tower and they've got a ward behind you. But yeah, I'm trying
Remember
to think.
that.
Yeah, we are blue side. Yes.
Here, I'll step in. You did pretty good in terms of a first crack at it, to be honest.
Yeah, I would say 2-4, and personally, I would either 1 or 3, depending on which major objective is up. So, like, if Dragon's up, or it's coming up soon, I would rather have 3 over 1.
Mm-hmm.
And then if Baron/Herald's coming up, I'd rather have 1 over 3.
So I've asked you a sort of evil question because I didn't give you all the information you needed to answer it.
Okay, cool. Man, this really is just like college.
So, in terms of our vision lines, we need 3 words, and we need 2 on one side and 1 on the other. So it's always going to be either this setup, or it's going to be this setup. And we're going to make these setups based on our previous vision line or our understanding of the enemy jungler's first clear. Remember, the idea is that we want to be able to make informed decisions, right? So when you were talking about our vision setup giving us information as to like where the jungler is at any given time, you're right. Let's say that we're operating with the bot side edition because we know the jungler has just finished their topside clear and we set this up while they were topside. All right. We won't get into the logistics of like how these words got put down just yet. We're just talking about the structure for now. We know the jungler is going to come here next, assuming that they're not, one of those I don't care about camps, I only care about ganks, I'm going to gank top lane again next to Lamau kind of junglers, right? Which is most players.
Yeah, I can't think of a single player who would just ignore camps to spam gank. That's definitely not me.
That's not the jungler that wins VAD every time or anything, by the way. Anyway, so the idea here is that when they come to this bot side, we know for sure that we're going to see them unless they walk down a lane, because they're going to pass through these areas. And to that end, that logic that you were talking about was good. We have this word down just in case, the idea being that it's the more likely place for them to visit, since they're looking to get river control is the most likely thing that they're going to want to do if they come into topside when their camps aren't up, or they're going to look to get into the enemy jungle. And it's not very common that you see a jungler path in this way to get into an enemy jungle, given that this is a very frequently warded location. There are some exceptions. We'll get to junglers that have mobility exceptions later in the doc, but the idea is that this gives you the most likely vision control, the most likely idea, like you have 95% confidence kind of idea that you're going to know where the jungler is for the next 90 seconds, right? And when I say 90 seconds, that should set off an alarm in your head, right? These words should be placed simultaneously, if possible.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Generally speaking, when you're setting up your 3-word vision line, you're going to want to get priority in 2 of your lanes. Generally speaking, you're going to want to be spending tempo from your bot lane if you can afford it. Your jungler is probably going to be placing a ping. Your mid laner is ideally getting tempo. And if your bot lane's not doing it, then you're probably getting a top side set up, and so your top laner is moving instead. And it all falls into place based on how far you can get with tempo, where these words might come from. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I see it.
So, the idea of a vision line is pretty simple, but the actual execution of getting well-constructed vision lines out consistently across the course of the game is something that pro teams are not very consistent with because it's that difficult. So if you and your team have a hard time doing it, I wouldn't stress it too much. So, let's talk about deductive vision. Deductive vision segues off of this idea of a vision line pretty well because you know how vision score is sort of a bait statistic?
You can't just say that. My whole life comes collapsing around me. I put my whole worth as a player into the vision score number. You can't just tell me it's a lie. Why? How is it a lie?
Because vision score is only based off of words that see enemy champions. But words that see enemy champions, if you use deductive reasoning, are just as valuable as words that do not see enemy champions.
That is true. That is true.
I mean, it's not a complete sham. I mean, you get vision score from destroying enemy words as well, but like,
I'm gonna be honest. I thought it was just based on wards placed, but
nope,
I did
no.
not know it was wards that see a champion.
If you place a word, you get a certain amount of vision score, but you get more vision score if the word sees a champion. So your vision score will be much more inflated if you take zombie ward and you have words that are in areas that are going to see enemy champions.
I see. Okay.
This is not common knowledge, it seems. So honestly, I wouldn't like sweat it too much, but it is a good thing to keep in mind. Um, so deductive vision, as I'm sure the name implies to you, the idea is that sometimes you're going to put a word down with the expectation not to see someone, but just in case you do see them. A good example is in our vision line, it's the word on the far side of the map from the side of the map that we're expecting the jungler to move to, right?
Yeah.
Because we're not expecting to see the jungler walk across this word. It's more of a just in case. It's what gives you like 15% of your 95% certainty, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, the other really helpful thing that deductive vision can do for you comes from the idea that vision set up for objectives is largely aggressive. So we're going to get into that for in a minute, but I just wanted to add one more thing to vision lines before we move away from it fully. And that's as the course of the game changes, as towers get knocked down, you push your vision line to be more aggressive. It's the deepest vision you can get. These setups are just as valuable later in the game, if that makes sense. You can do this one
Yeah.
as well. Anyway, so neutral setup. Neutral setup is mirrored. What I mean by that is that the blue setup for dragon is the same as the red setup for Nash, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so we've zoomed in on our dragon pit. Now, there are 3 pink words and 3 green words that are required if to say that you have set up the bare minimum required vision for a dragon setup if you are playing from the red side. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Tell me where they go.
Oh, okay, I gotta think about how I ward, like, okay, so typically, it's gonna be hard, so Tribush, okay, I'm on red side, right?
Mm-hmm. Is it a pink or a
Alright,
green
if I'm on
Tribush?
red side, I like to get a control ward in enemy Tribush, the bush behind the red, if not there, the bush behind the red pit.
Here or like over here?
Not
you mean?
there. No, like the one near the dragon wall.
There.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Is it a
then
pink or is it a green that we're putting down?
pinks. I'm thinking pinks. And then oh wait, no, pink should probably be in the river because that's where you deny vision. Definitely a pink on dragon in the pit so that it can see wards. That one, I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
So
trying
3
to think
pinks,
if
3
this is-
greens.
trying to think if this is actually where I'd want the pinks now. I mean, this is where I like them personally,
Okay.
but
It's completely
the
fine. I'm not gonna chew you out, but I am gonna have some things to say.
okay, actually move one of the pinks should probably be in the pixel brush.
Which pink should I move?
The one near red pit. That one can just be a sight ward. I do like having vision in that area. So definitely put a sight ward in that little pathway.
Here, where?
Oh yeah, up closer to mid lane. Yeah, like around there. Somewhere in that area. Because that's just a good ward. Then put a sight ward in the bush near red. So like next to red.
Here? Or
And
here?
then
Which one? There's 2 bushes next to red.
honestly kind of both.
Okay.
kind of
I'll let
kind
you
of
just.
both.
I'm just gonna let you keep throwing words out, and then we'll settle, and then we'll talk about it. How about that? Is there anywhere else you feel like needs a piece of vision?
Maybe the bush coming from mid lane. That's like the only other place
Bridge
where
bush. Bridge bush.
yeah, that's that one.
Alrighty.
That'd be like the last place I'd or like the last place that hasn't already that had a ward on it that I would want to put a ward if I'm warding.
Okay. All right. So you're gonna notice 2 things. First thing is that I specified we wanted to have 3 of each.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that pen is very thin. Stop it. Get some help. There we go. The second thing that you're going to notice is that there's actually a method to the madness, and I pulled a tricky on you and didn't give you complete information again.
Cool. That's all right.
So this word is correct. Congratulations.
Wow.
This word is also correct. Congratulations.
Wow.
When you are setting up
so-
vision correctly, you're going to sweep the inner ring of their jungle and come back through river.
Okay.
If you sweep the outer ring of their jungle, you're gonna kill their vision, right?
Yeah.
So then
you don't need a pink.
need pinks. Good. So then all that matters is enough vision that you can make good choices. Generally speaking, we're going to look at vision setup like this, or vision setup like this. Either is fine, you have to make some choices. Sorry, like this.
Okay.
Either is fine, you need a word here though. And the reason that you need that word here or here, depending on which, is that you only have so many sweepers, and you need to watch for teleport flanks.
Oh, that's true.
So, the first thing is, remember, vision setup. The reason why all of those coaches say your jungler and your support need to walk together to get vision is because you need 2 fucking sweepers. You need to sweep through this side of the jungle and clear pertinent vision. You need to get vision so that you can see if there's going to be a steal attempt from over wall. Remember, people coming from these directions you're going to see them on the wave if you're getting prio correctly for a neutral. And then when you come back into river, you don't necessarily need to sweep because of pinks, but you want to keep one sweeper up in case you need to contest pixel because they're sieging through bridge. Okay?
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I get it.
So we said I like this setup. This setup is nice. I like this a lot. Wait, for a blue side, how do we change it?
If you're blue side,
Mhm.
because you're gonna be sweeping the back ring around the other side of the objective. So, or the blue side, the blue pit, blue buff near blue buff on red side.
Oh, you're
You'll
saying we're
need,
going to be sweeping.
yeah. If I'm on, yeah, sweeping like around. If not, yeah, probably. It's hard to kind of get around there, so probably more like going up through the river and then back around into the other entrance. Yeah, more like there rather than through mid lane. Unless you already have just control of that area. But you'd go back and I think the control wards are probably still fine. Um, because yeah, that's where you need to have the vision denial along with just like stable permanent vision for the objective. But for the site wards, probably the corridor behind wolves.
Here?
That's sort of like three-way. No, like I'm thinking like the I'm thinking like the crescent moon of the camp.
Oh, it's like
Yeah, so that like that fork there. And then the site ward that's already there. Okay, I'm on red. Wait.
You're on
No,
blue
I'm
side
on
now.
blue. I'm on blue.
Yep.
So that ward could be back near the J. Similar to like, yeah, just getting vision on that those entryways there. And then the last one, have that in Tribush.
Okay.
No, not like the blue side Tribush. Blue side Tribush.
Oh, you misunderstand. No, actually, this is good. We have all the words we need now.
Okay.
Like all of them.
Okay.
All 8 of them.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, you need more wards.
On blue side, yeah. You've probably heard people say that red side is easier to get dragon, blue side is easier to get Nash. And their vision setups are mirrored. And this is why it's easier to get vision control for dragon on red side. Because you need to protect against both jungles when you're on blue side. And vice versa on Nash. If you're red side, then your wards on this positions would be in the positions that they are in on the cross map side, if you are a red side taking Nash. And you have to do all of this while also having the harder access to the river.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Yep. Oh, and one other thing you might notice. Do you remember when we were talking about vision lines?
Yeah.
You notice how blue side dragon setup uses vision line words? Vision lines are the most important thing that any team can learn to use vision-wise, besides the idea that spending tempo to get vision is the way that you get vision. If you can master vision lines and tempo equals vision, then you'll be better than every team in IBS or in a Gold Plat League.
Wow.
However, that involves getting good at using tempo, which is really difficult for players that don't control waves well, and that, generally speaking, like I'm really bad at controlling waves, and I'm also really bad at the game. That's not a coincidence. Okay, neutral setups are good, and we've talked about deductive vision as well, so now's a good time to talk about some special champs like Zac and Kanye.
Yeah, and I do play Zac, so...
You do play Zac, so then you're aware. Yeah. You're aware Another really good one is a champion like Nunu or Rammus for different but similar reasons.
Because you're fast.
Yeah, because you are fast. The idea being that you need to place vision in different places for some champions, because if you don't, then you will die. Um, and those differences are, usually speaking, you need to be warding over walls for champions that go over walls for 0 cost, like Kayn or Zac or Rek'Sai. And if you're playing against the champion that's monster fast, then putting a ward inside of River Rushes is insufficient. You need to ward deeper for
Yeah.
Nunu. You need to ward deeper for Hecarim. You need to ward deeper for Rammus. And God bless, none of those champions are meta right now, so it's something you'll have to keep in your back pocket, but it's something good to know. All right. So we talked about these beautiful setups for vision that I never get to see in my games. So the rest of this information is good to know, especially if you're casting games played by players who are good at the game. But you probably won't get to use it in your competitive games, to be honest.
That's all right.
So let's talk about vision as an objective then. There's 2 ways of treating vision as an objective. You can treat you getting vision as an objective, and you can treat your opponent's vision as an objective. If you do the latter, you're doing something called a vision control system. And a vision control system is something we'll get into at the very end if I feel like it. But the TLDR is that just like you spend tempo to put vision on the map, and that tempo is something that you're planning to spend so that you can get information to make more informed decisions, like we've said a couple of times now. This is, by the way, if you hadn't guessed, the thing that's most important for anybody watching this video to take away since we say it so much. Vision as an objective should be considered the first objective towards anything you want to do. Do you want to dive the enemy bot lane? You better make sure that you have the information required to know if that dive is going to work. If you go to do that dive and you didn't get vision first, and the enemy jungler is waiting under a tower with a very, very sad looking smiley face on their face, then you're probably going to die. Likewise, if you are looking to secure a neutral objective and you don't ward over the wall and a TP flank kills you, or the jungler pops over the wall and steals the neutral objective, then it's because you played the previous objective poorly. In fact, we call them neutral objectives, the dragons, the Rift Heralds, the Nashers, but I think that really waters down the idea of what an objective is in this game, like competitively overall. It's much more helpful to think of an objective as a thing that you can spend tempo on. Does that make sense to you, Becky?
Yeah. No, that makes sense because, like we think neutral objectives. Cause I'm trying to think like a lot of players that look at number. What is number? All right, how many did we get? How many neutral objective did we get? But there's when thinking of objectives in that way, there's more than just numbers that show up on the stat screen at the end of the game that I screenshot and then send to my jungler who inted me after the game, calling them bad and then telling them to uninstall.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how it is, right? But that's the thing, you can't really quantify like tempo spent efficiency, right? There isn't a metric that people are using to measure that, so it's hard to justify like thinking in this system unless you have a pretty good like ambiguous understanding of how the game should be looking, right? But vision as an objective is a really valuable framework for creating a team that will actually prioritize objectives well. Not just neutrals, but structures, not just structures, but dives, not just dives, but invades, not just invades, but ganks. All of these things are objectives that you can target, but in order to do any of them, you need to have the information that lets you know that it's an okay play to go for, right? So that's why vision is an objective, and it is the most important one. Okay.
Okay.
So we've been at it for 44 minutes. We could go into systems, but systems is its own talk and it's quite long. So I think I won't. But if you have questions for me, like maybe there was something I didn't talk about that you'd like to have an answer for, and if chat has questions, those are also, it's a good time to field them before we wrap up.
Okay. So, as a jungler, right? When when I'm looking to try and get vision on the map, there's not a whole lot I as an individual can do. So
Why do you
I
think
need
that?
to because I can't really control the lane states aside from going in and actually no, I can control the lane states. I can help crash a wave if
Correct.
there's a good crash available
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. Um,
Yeah.
but in terms of getting wards down, a lot of that comes from the laners than the jungler, because the jungler gets sweeper pretty much immediately after at the start of the game, after running out, dropping a ward recall and getting sweeper.
Tell me you don't buy pink words without telling me you don't buy pink words.
I do. I buy pink wards more than a lot of other people. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like it's only one on the map at a time,
Uh-huh.
and I like saving it
Are you
for
telling?
emotional
Do
for
you do
emotional
you
support.
do you not move your pink word when it's still alive?
I do move my pink ward to where like I need it in front of me or I
Okay.
need it near me.
All right. So let me ask you a couple of questions. How is your jungle tracking?
Not good. Uh,
How familiar are
unless
you
like
with the
it's
clears of the junglers that are in the meta right now?
um uh great question. I,
Because if your jungle tracking isn't very good and you're not up to date with meta clears, then vision isn't going to help you make informed decisions very much because you're not going to be able to deduce where they're going to go next. It is really hard to track in VAD because you have a lot of psychopaths that don't actually clear well. But,
hey, whoa, hold on. Hey.
but, in their own way, those players are just as predictable because once they've sort of established what their play pattern is going to be for the game, unless they go out of their way to change it, you have a pretty good idea of where they're going to be for the majority of the game. Just because it's wrong doesn't mean that it's not anticipatable. In either case, the other thing that I would point out is what if they go in their way to change it unintentionally? What do you mean, Ishan? Like, easy to track because they play like human beings. There's no way they just do, I feel. Yeah, so there are players who. Ishan, you've seen Hunter x Hunter. I'm not gonna spoil Hunter x Hunter on stream though. That seems like a low thing to do. Um, I need to think of a better way to
it's
explain it.
vibe based gameplay.
Vibe-based gameplay, yeah, but just the same as a vibe is like feelable, right? You can get a sense for what these players are going to do, even if it doesn't follow a rationale the way that you're you're able to construct from vision deductively, right? Like in solo queue, a great example of this is that if you're playing against the jungler who's failed to do anything for the first 12 or so minutes of the game, the likelihood that they're going to do something in the next 12 minutes of the game is pretty low. There are some exceptions, like Viego players, because they're just psychopaths. But for the most part, junglers don't switch up their game plan like halfway through the game. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we've sort of drifted away from the concept of vision, but in general, when you're playing against someone, it's very rare that you run into someone whose play pattern completely shifts throughout the game unless they're passing the keyboard off to their big brother. So it sounds like for you, Becky, the things that you need to develop as a player outside of the vision concepts that we talked about today have a lot to do with getting better at analyzing your opponent quickly and then using that information in addition to the information you can parse from the map to make informed decisions about where you should be.
Yeah, there was like one situation during exhibitions where we had vision. on where it was when I was playing against Mike's Revenge. We had vision on where he was starting,
Mm-hmm.
and he was playing Trundle, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. So as a champion, I'm familiar with. So I had a better idea of how long it would take him to get from camp to camp,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to actually play around that and get an early advantage in the jungle because I knew where he was pathing.
Right.
And when I saw his creep score, I was like, oh, he hasn't taken Krugs yet. I can go take those
Sure. Yeah,
when he
that's it's a
showed
great
up on a
example.
different part of the map.
Right. So then you already know the value of this. You just need to get better at it. Right?
Yeah.
That's not like I'm not judging you when I say that, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
no. I literally started jungling again 4 weeks ago. So, I take what I can get. But in
emergency
terms of like
jungling in
setting
Thailand.
up, yeah, in terms of like setting up vision, as a jungler,
Mm-hmm.
do you typically want to be working with your laners exclusively, or
Absolutely not.
what can you do on your own as a jungler to get vision?
So you actually already hinted at the idea. It's when you see the enemy jungler, keeping track of their creep count, and when you have opportunities to move into the enemy jungle, seeing what camps are down. Because if you're on the side where the camps are down, you can make some deductions, right?
Yeah.
And if you know how their creep score has changed and where they were most recently from the last glimpse that you saw, you can still make that deduction without necessarily putting down words, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the idea that like the vision doesn't necessarily have to come from you putting down words proactively, although you should, especially in choke points that don't necessarily get frequently checked, because they allow you to make these decisions more frequently. But when the opportunity presents itself to you, and you can make decisions about where the jungler has been and what you should do next in response, you can do that even if you're not the one putting out all the words, or even if nobody on your team buys pinks or put words out at all. That deductive power is still capable within you, and you hold all the agency in the early game, so you might as well use it.
I see. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That clears up a bit of what I as jungle am capable of doing in terms of vision and tracking and making
Excuse me.
sure laners don't die immediately.
And sort of, junglers have a raw deal because they have to understand all of the lanes as well as the jungle role in order to be a truly good jungler.
Oh, it's a good thing I'm a flex player. I'm a fill main.
But yeah, it builds off of what you just said, the idea that you can interpret lane states and make decisions about what you can do to create the most value on the map. Because, not to devalue my previous tempo video, but what's my favorite map state? Nexus Dead. Um, but it gives you the most, like, maximizing your tempo as a jungler is largely about making decisions that beget the lowest opportunity cost at any given time. So that's where your mastery of understanding lanes comes from. Uh, that was a facetious answer to my favorite map state question, but it's true. I like to win games. I don't really much care for anything else.
You know, I'm okay losing games as long as I've learned something. You know, unless it's a game that matters, and I would like to win.
Yeah, well, we were not too good at that together, but maybe we'll be better at it apart, Becky. Cool. Do you have any other questions you wanted to answer for the time?
Um, none. Yeah, no, nothing that I can think of at least.
Okay. Well, if you think of something later, you can always direct message me. It won't end up in the VOD, but at least you'll get your answer in chat. This is your
Yeah,
last chance to ask questions as well.
and if you want to know my favorite map state, I like my favorite map state is mid lane even, bot lane even, top lane at my inhibitor tower. I want to see the enemy top laner at my inhibitor tower. It makes me feel so good. It makes me feel so happy seeing that no matter what I do up there, it's just there's just no hope. It just feels awesome. That's my favorite map state.
Wow. Who hurt you? My day was pretty good, by the way, Ishi. I did my 10-hour shift. I woke up at 3:30 in the morning and drove back to the base, and then worked for 8 hours, then drove home and worked for 2 hours, and now we're doing this. It's pretty good day, actually. How do I think round 1 of the draft is going to go? Well, hopefully the captains recognize that the role prevalence has changed from previous seasons in ways that they're going to need to adapt to. And they hopefully don't expect me to solo carry the league, because I'm not going to. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because I feel like it would be too much meddling if I give advice to captains on how to draft at this point.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna give great advice. Always, just pick your jungler. Pick your jungler first. Pick your support. If not the jungler, the other roles are dog shit. They do not matter, except maybe mid lane. Like, top lane, completely fucking irrelevant. You can drag a bat. Sorry for swearing in this nice, pleasant talk we've had.
I don't care. I swear on stream.
Yeah.
I'm not
You know what?
1984. It's not Victorious over here.
Yeah, true. Top lane, completely irrelevant. AD carry, completely irrelevant. You could literally just have like an AI in those roles, and it's functionally exactly the same as having like Wolven Alchemist in there. So it does not matter. You need to have good jungle, good support, and like decent mid lane. That's my thought for drafting, at least.
That's interesting. First pick Kibcat, second pick Galley, third pick Amato, fourth pick Defoe. Is Defoe really? Oh, no. Wait, is it already determined who's drafting in what order? Is that like the official... Is that the official order at this point? I gotta wait on chat to catch up with our stream before I get the answer to my question, unfortunately. Also, can I flame Ishan for wanting to draft a top laner? You can't have a team without having a top laner, Kappa. At some point, you gotta pick one. First scrub you thought of XD. Most overrated support, and that is the order. Well, let's pull up the
it's not Wolven. It's not just Wolven. Thinking of other AD carries. Regdor, I love you, buddy. You're getting dragged across the finish line. like I was last split in any game we won. Just getting dragged across.
I would say the most overrated support is probably gonna be... it's kind of hard. Because there's a bunch of support players that have a negative reputation that deserve better, but also there's a bunch of players who are genuinely good, but have a reputation that precedes them a bit. I would say... I don't know some of these players. I don't know Locke. I don't know Mikachu, so I can't say anything about them.
I have played with Mika. We are literally on a VAS team together. Great enchanter player. Doesn't know how to ward. So to use that information as you will.
I've sort of changed my mind about Ultro, because I used to think Ultro... I didn't give Ultro enough credit, so I was a little miffed when people were saying how good he is, but he is genuinely a really good player. So it's weird to say that he's the most overrated. I think I would say it's probably Vigor or Feed then, because that guy, like, is a bit of a flipper.
Actually, you know what? I think Ultra does deserve the reputation of not playing a single tank ever.
He does play tanks.
Where? I saw Anivia in exhibitions
I'm just
instead
saying
of a tank.
he's completely capable of playing tanks. Let's see. And did I miss any? Oh yeah, I have to. So first, I don't know what some of these captains are thinking, and it impacts what other captains will choose to do, right? Like I don't know Kibcat like that, so I have no clue what first pick is going to be. But I'm assuming since Kibcat is a mid laner, he's going to pick a jungler. And from the jungle
So
pool available, he'll
Night
probably pick
Train.
Night Train because Night Train's the best option. Um, Galley's a top laner.
Night Train. Depends on if Galley wants to play with Eyesight. That's the question.
Mm. Yeah, it's just hard to say. It's just hard to say. If you can play other classes, you can play tanks. No, that's not true at all, because players who play too many ranged champions have a really hard time playing melee champions. So you're gonna see, like, if you've ever seen like a Janna player or a Soraka player try to play Nautilus for the first time, it's really bad because they stand behind their AD carry and don't create pressure on the wave, and it just makes me so angry, Phil.
What about the Nautilus players playing Janna for the first time?
Exact opposite problem. They stand under the enemy champion's tower and die immediately.
That's me on Soda. Smile.
Night Train got gapped by Eyesight. I have a lot of like Eyesight is a really good player as well. I just think that Night Train's jungle pattern, from what I know about him playing jungle, is really good for playing in VAD. That's what I'll say about that. Figure if you'd built Manamine Malf support and Axiomark, what a Chad. Which one is
I don't think
better?
that's a bad
Oh
build.
no, I don't think that one player is necessarily better than the other, but just as like a blanket pick, I would say that picking junglers that have a habit of like AFK rage ganking lanes, that takes you pretty far in VAD, so I would pick Night Train for that reason. Not that that's not a very successful strategy, I just have not got a lot of respect for it. Those two should have been one message. Oh, okay, gotcha. Any other spicy questions? Disagree with that, to be honest. Night Train can only play 2 champions. Reminds you of Whiskey Lion. Meh. Well, I guess we'll see. It's not really that big of a deal to me if I'm wrong. I don't know the players in the league well enough to make really good conclusions. It's not like talking about Vision where I have the concept pretty well down. That falls off mid-split when people figure you out. Tell that to the Hammerheads 2 splits ago.
Yeah, what Hammerheads?
They had
Their
June.
jungler was Sharky, right?
Yes, the guy who averaged 4 CS a minute for the entire
Yeah,
league.
no, he never farmed camps. He literally just spam ganked the
Most
entire.
underrated mid lane. Um, Probably iRecluse. I don't know some of these mids, so it's hard to say, but iRecluse isn't that bad, so the fact that I'm not hearing very much said about them, I would say that Sharky won a split playing jungle by ganking nonstop.
I was there. I was on the desk. I saw it with my eyes.
Oh, there's some different mid laners. Who the fuck's Cheeto?
Oh, Cheeto is one of the players who gapped Giggle, and presumably.
Interesting.
I don't know who Cheeto is though. Underrated. If I honestly, yeah, Recluse seemed pretty decent from what I saw.
Cheeto is an ADC. He gapped Giggle. Well, Giggle's laning phase is not what Giggle is best at, so that's not exactly saying anything.
Yeah, I beat Giggle in lane. That means nothing.
Like, Giggle is just really good at team fighting, and he plays AD carry, so that's kind of what you have to be good at when you play AD carry in low elo. That's not to say that he's, like, a horrible laner. I'm just saying, like, he's not an insanely good one. No, it's not really a metric that stands out to me. I have the post-match screenshot. From pick order, what captain do you think is set up to have the best draft? Scroll all the way back up to the pick order. So KibCat is going first, and they're a mid laner. So if KibCat is a good mid laner, then they're set up quite well because they pick jungle on one, they take the best jungler in the league, and then they take whatever remaining top laner in round two, and then they pick some kind of like, wait for God bot lane like I did in the previous split, and they're kind of piss chilling. But if KibCat isn't an insanely good mid laner, the split's mid lane is pretty stacked. I don't really have enough information about the mid lane to say. Then they're going to suffer a little bit, and the best jungler will be wasted pick. In that case, I would say probably. Um,
I spoke with Feathers. Well, I was because I was refing on Tuesday, and Feathers hopped into the help desk to say hello, and I talked with him a bit about his drafting theory, and his idea is that this split, aside from like a few players, is going to be more defined by how many human beings you can draft on your team, like how many well-adjusted individuals you can put on one team to succeed. Maybe you won't win if you just go for well-adjusted individuals, but uh yeah, no, if you can put a team that actually will cooperate, you can succeed as opposed to just picking the best players because by coincidence some of the best players also seem insufferable to play with. So, you know,
hmm.
uh
I would say, just to finish my thought from
it's an
before,
interesting concept.
if not KibCat, if KibCat can't step up mid lane, then it'll be Defoe that has the best slot for picking. I think this year.
Yeah, I think 4 is pretty I actually like the middle two spots personally because it's snake draft. If your goal is to draft a team of humans, 6 and 7, you're pretty much guaranteed to get good players who are tolerable people, good enough players who are able to work together. That's what I think, at least.
What players do I think are going to drop? Oh, Din. Next question. Um,
uh, Cup. What junglers? I've never been afraid of a jungler. Not once in my life. I don't even look at the rankings of players. I just run it down. I just pick whatever champion I feel like, and I don't track. I do nothing. I play entirely by vibes, and hopefully it works. It beat Cheese Key, so some
wait. That's not fair, and you know it.
I
That's
beat Cheese Key,
that's
so
that's not fair, and you know it. Um, I think I don't know. It's kind of hard to say who's gonna drop because I don't know so many of these players. But I mean, isn't there a player like Shu or somebody that has a record of like dropping like twice or three times? Because they would be like
uh,
the obvious choice.
yeah, Shu dropped twice. Once as a captain.
Nice. Choose
But
as more
this time she was a support, so maybe they've changed.
Do I think there are top laners worth a first round pick? I do, actually, this year for first time ever.
Yeah, Sakroza.
Not
Hello?
gonna I'm not gonna
Hello?
confirm or deny which top laners. That seems like maybe a little much. You can't say that after talking about how important it is to draft humans, man. Like, come on.
You're right, Sakroza's not human. It's true. It's not normal. It's like
He's funny though. I'll give him that. That's really funny. Thoughts on Andy Gwen gapping 3 diamonds in Clash? Wolfen is the best AD carry. Wolfen is an underrated player. One, he, I don't know if I'd say he's the best AD carry, but he's an underrated player. Andy Gwen gapping 3 diamonds in Clash. I've played with diamonds in Clash. They almost never take it seriously, so I wouldn't use that as my main feather puff up, to be honest. Is Wolven? Well, yeah, Wolven, there you go. I think you're underrated.
Yeah, Wolven, I think you're in Ragnar tier, so you know, could be worse. I would rather play with you than the 80 carry I had last week in exhibitions.
That's pretty hurtful, Becky.
This is now just me being toxic. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do this.
And you've snuck turn my lecture on macro into VAD drama alert again. Can't believe you've done this. Nah, I can't say that you're bad because you solo killed me top lane once. Cool. Do you have any other VAD drama alert questions while we're still here? Otherwise, I'll wrap it up. I've got Tower of Fantasy to play. Who's the worst player in this draft? From the players I know, because I don't know all these players. It's probably Mike's Revenge. Killer Kill is not around this year.
I think I played against Mike last week. He was the only team I was able to beat. But I honestly don't think Mike is as bad as he was last split or the split before. He's slowly becoming better and better, and the pool of players is weaker this split than it was last. So I think that Mike actually is better than some other players. Like NA Beifeng was
Don't know who
quite
that is.
possibly one of the worst mid laners I've ever seen in my entire life. Like I was genuinely Melly G picked Renekton mid and just ran this guy over for like 20 minutes. It was really depressing.
I mean, Melichi does that to a lot of folks. I don't know who Tree Toby and Beifong are, though, so, like, I can't make a judgment about them. Who's the best player? Like, the best player in the entire draft? Hmm. Can I ask you a response question before I answer? Do you mean mechanically the best player? Or do you mean, like, overall game understanding plus mechanics plus everything else? Overall, the best player in terms of, like, everything.
See, I honestly I think this is a hard question because there are some players who I think are good for different reasons. Cause like if we're assuming that Night Train and Eyesight are both like first round picks, they're good for different reasons. Night Train's good for this league. Eyesight is a smarter player. And those are two different qualities. So it's hard to pick which one is overall better in my opinion. But obviously the answer is once again Sakroza. Thank you.
Okay, I'll ask the question that you didn't want to have answered. Or I'll answer the question you didn't want to have answered first. I think Meli G is mechanically the best player in the game. And I think there is like in the game in terms of our tournament. And I think that his understanding of of cross rolls does make him a compelling um, choice overall. But it's more fun to ego it and say that I'm the best player in the league. Get fucked.
Wow. Yeah, no, we're just this is just the waiting room for Melly to swap back to top lane. This is just what the waiting room is.
Yeah, and I've won a game on all roles in VAD at this point. Well, I haven't. No, yeah, I have. I've won a game on every position in VAD at this point. I finished the circuit. That's obviously the only thing that matters.
There's the proof. There's the evidence.
Am I doing it right, Becky? Am I ready to join you on?
Of course, yes.
Let's go. Cool. Well, I think that's everything I want to do today. We'll probably talk about systems the next time I get around to doing one of these. But if you're in the audience and you want to schedule a session and there's something that you want to talk about and have explained, then be sure to hit me up and I'll schedule it with you and we'll do it impromptu just like this. And a player I don't want to be on the same team as, Dark Python. Mostly because I'm mental blocked playing with that guy from... But, like, I don't have anything against him, I'm just mental blocked. You guys have a wonderful evening.